Hi, my name's Andy Billig. I'm a state representative from the 3rd Legislative District in Spokane. Welcome to this edition of the Washington Whiteboard. Earlier this week we rolled out the House Democrats' operating budget, and I wanted to give a little overview of our budget situation and the challenges that we're facing this legislative session. When we started this 2-year budget cycle, which was last legislative session, we started a 2-year budget cycle. We had $32 billion in projected revenues and $32 billion in projected spending. In the state of Washington, we always have a balanced budget in the operating fund. So we always balance to what the projected revenues are going to be. Since we left Olympia last year, we now find out that we're actually going to be about $2 billion less in revenue. So what we need to do is to rebalance our spending or generate additional revenue to equal that $2 billion revenue shortfall. Now the challenge is, if you said, well, we're going to take $2 billion out of a $32 billion budget, no, that's not a tremendous percentage. Seems like you should be able to do that. But here's the problem. Of the $32 billion, if you take, this is about $8 billion, and everything above that is off limits. We can't cut for one reason or another. It's either constitutionally protected, things like basic education, or there are federal requirements, or we've already spent the money because we're already partway through the 2-year budget cycle. So we have to take all of the cuts that are coming out of this $8 billion. Now, how are we going to do that? So we've got to cut $2 billion. Well, we already solved some of the problem. Last December, we had a special session and we cut $500 million. We also just got some good news in the latest revenue forecast and caseload forecast. And so that saved us about another $500 million. So our current problem that we need to solve now is about $1 billion. So out of that $8 billion, we've got to cut $1 billion. Now, a lot of people say, and sometimes we get emails, there's sort of a myth out there that government spending is out of control, government revenue, taxes out of control. So it should be easy to cut $1 billion, but I'd like to play Mythbusters for just a second if I could. I've got a couple charts for you. This shows state spending per capita, per person state spending since 1987. And this is really an amazing stat. We're at the same point in state spending right now as we were in 1986. So in 25 years, we're at the lowest point in per capita spending in 25 years when adjusted for inflation. So also on that same topic, this shows the burden of taxes for state and local taxes. And really, when you're comparing state to state, you really have to do state and local taxes together. And this is very interesting. We are at the lowest point in 50 years in our state in terms of state and local tax burden. Right here is 2009, which is the most current numbers with the local taxes. It's even lower if we did it now, but we don't have all of those numbers compiled yet. And then the bottom line shows our rank compared to other states. And we're right now 35th out of 50 states in terms of tax burden for local and state taxes. In our state, we have this pride. We've got a great state. We've got a high quality of life. We pride ourselves on terrific schools, on the solid infrastructure that we need to have a booming economy. We want all those things. We need all those things. Well, if we want them and we need them, we need to invest in them. And it's very hard to make that investment when we're 35th out of 50 in state and local taxes. So how are we going to solve the problem? It's not as, by breaking those myths, you can see it's not as simple as just saying cut all the extra spending. It's not a spending problem, it's a revenue problem. So how are we going to solve it? Well, there's 3 possible solutions. So let's talk solutions. We can cut, and that's what we did last year. We faced a significant budget problem, we cut. We came back in the special session and we cut. The second thing we can do is we can raise revenue. And we can do this through closing tax exemptions, which not only raises revenue, but makes our tax system more fair. We could also reform our tax system to make it more stable, more fair, and produce adequate revenue. And then the third thing we can do is to grow our economy. And this is to invest in things that will help to increase spending to increase jobs and to increase, therefore, revenue to the state through state taxes. And I think the solution is to do all three and to take a balanced approach. So as we go through the rest of this legislative session, I'm going to be focused on all three of these and taking that balanced approach where we cut some revenues, but do it responsibly. It's going to hurt people in our community, but we are going to need to make some cuts. Where we focus on sources of new revenue in the short term, things like closing tax loopholes, which makes our tax system more fair and also raises more revenue, but also looking at long-term revenue solutions to make our tax system more stable. And then focusing on investments that help grow our economy, things like the Spokane Medical School and investing in our aviation biofuel industry, which is a very promising and emerging industry in our state. So for the rest of this legislative session, I'll be focused on all three of these and working to make sure that we take a balanced approach to solving our budget challenges so that Washington remains a great place to live, not only in the short term, but also looking at the long-term success of our state. Thanks very much for joining me for this edition of the Washington Whiteboard.